Hello and welcome to episode 56 of the Synergen Leadership Podcast. For those of you who are listening for the first time, my name is Julian Carl and I'm CEO and co-founder of Synergen Group and really happy to be here with you again. I'm passionate about all things leadership and management, so passionate in fact that I decided to start a podcast about it. And here we are in season 2 and my purpose for the podcast continues to be the same, to raise the standard of leadership. So in today's show, I speak with Jayne Ward, who is the Group Head of Performance, Remuneration and Payroll at Australia Post. And to give you a little bit of context about what that means, Australia Post has over 35,000 employees, so quite a large organisation. Jayne is passionate about making a difference by creating and implementing tailored strategies that work for the business by developing a values-led culture which is filled with high-performing teams. In 2017 and 18, she achieved LinkedIn Power Profile status within the HR space, meaning she has one of the most viewed profiles in Australia. She is also a board director, transformational change leader, and corporate governance specialist with over 20 years of progressive and global experience and has extensive consulting and corporate experience advising boards, senior leadership teams, and the management of publicly listed organisations. Now, during the course of the conversation, we explore a number of different ideas. We start by looking back at Jayne's leadership journey beginning with when she was a team leader in a contact centre. We also explore what the differences are between being in a consulting role and being in a leadership role. Jayne's area of leadership passion is all about coaching and supporting someone to grow into the best they can be. And we end up talking about the impact her current CEO has had on the business. So keep listening, and as always, would really like to hear your thoughts about the interview with Jayne Ward. Happy listening.
Welcome to the Synergen Leadership Podcast with Julian Carl. Julian returns in 2019 with weekly conversations with leaders and authors from Australia and around the world, giving you the opportunity to share in their journey and learn from their expertise and knowledge. Julian also shares some of the tools and techniques he uses as a leader, mentor, and facilitator, helping you to build your leadership capability and improve your confidence as a leader.
Well, welcome, Jayne, to the Synergen Leadership Podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here so that the listeners have a bit of an idea of who you are and what you do. Who is Jayne Ward?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the head of Remuneration, Performance and Payroll at Australia Post. Obviously, Australia Post is one of the largest organisations in Australia, and we've got one of the largest workforces as well. We've got over 35,000 people.
Wow, 35,000. I didn't think it was that many.
Oh, they're just our permanent employees, and double that as well when we talk about all our extended workforce as well.
Right. And are you able to give a little bit more detail about what your role involves?
Yes, certainly. So I've got a team of about 60 and we run everything from the payroll for the whole organisation to the remuneration, all the performance, all the recognition, all our benefits, our global mobility and also our sales incentives programs as well.
Okay, great. So is there an interesting fact that the listeners might not know about either you or Australia Post?
Oh, I don't think we'll go with me, but certainly Australia Post. One of the things that really blew me away recently was we are, I think, the second most trusted brand in Australia after Medicare. So we are known by everyone, we're touched by everybody across Australia, and we are trusted by the community. And that, you know, that's great. It gives us a great responsibility as well. But it's great to know that the community know who we are, know what we do, and that we are trusted by them.
That's interesting. Do you think that impacts the way that people want to come work for Australia Post because they feel as though they're a trusted organisation?
Definitely. I also look after the grad program as well, and that certainly comes through in the feedback from our grads coming in. Australia Post is known to them. Everybody knows who Australia Post is. I think what surprises people, though, is the breadth and depth of everything we do. So they'll come in the door thinking we just post letters for people, and it's so much more than that. You know, we have one of the largest retail networks, for example, across Australia. We've got over 4,400 post offices.
The figures are quite staggering, aren't they, when you think about it? 4,400.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So I'd like to take you back. all the way back to your first significant leadership role. Are you able to share a little bit with the listeners what that was?
Yeah, look, the one that really jumps to mind is a team leader in a contact centre. That was probably my first people leader role, and it was a new contact centre, so it was brand new starting out. It was all shiny, everything smelt lovely and new, and I was given 2 agents as the first wave of agents, and they were chalk and cheese. So one was very well spoken, very refined, got the system, excellent. And the other was, as I say, total opposite. She had a speech impediment, and she really struggled to talk clearly on the telephone. She struggled with the systems, and I was a new team leader, and I had no idea what to do. And I think what I learned there was no one can give you any book or any guidance. You have to go with your own intuition on this. And I ended up just talking to her and understanding who she was. And it turned out that she was very passionate about wanting to be an agent and actually wanting to work. And her family were very against her working. And so she was actually coming to the job and working with her family not supporting her. But she was so wanted to succeed. And I ended up spending time with her, and we worked on her pronunciations, where she struggled a little bit with some pronunciations, and she'd go home and she would practice with her daughter on her daughter's toy telephones. They would sit in opposite rooms and they would practice the calls together. And for me, that came from when I first went, I'm never going to be able to lead this person and help this person, to she became one of the people that I actually admire the most, that tenacity, that dedication. And she just needed an opportunity to really show her strengths. And she became one of the best agents in the contact centre. After about 9 months, she won awards because she was so dedicated. She constantly wanted to improve. And all it took was somebody to give her an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful.
Very powerful, very powerful.
Yeah, having that personal impact on someone, and especially in one of your first roles.
It was, well, I didn't know where to go at first, but it just came down to gut instinct was, let's find out, why is this person here and so determined that they want to come and work here?
And I'm always curious when people decide if they want to stay in leadership. Was it that moment where you thought this whole leadership thing's for me?
Oh, on that first day, absolutely not. I decided I did not want to be a leader because I had no idea what I was going to do. I don't think it was a conscious I want to be a leader. I think it was more I want to learn and I want to grow. And I actually really enjoyed and got a buzz from coaching and developing that individual. So for me, it wasn't I want to be a leader. It was I want to work with people and I want to replicate that. I want to do this again, because to be able to change somebody's life like that was so incredibly powerful and really motivating for me and very self-satisfying for me, because I was like, wow, I played a part in that.
Yeah, it's very rewarding when you can have that personal impact on someone.
Definitely. So for me, it wasn't a conscious decision I want to be a leader. It's actually more about the person that I got that buzz from going, wow, that was amazing.
And how long were you in that role?
I was a team leader for about 18 months, 2 years, and grew the team, started with the 2, ended up with a team of 24. So again, very different skills leading, in quite a junior leadership role, but still leading lots of people. You can't necessarily have that one-on-one relationship, so it's different skills.
And so I'd like to explore just one other role that you've had. What would you say is probably the one of the most significant people leader roles before the one you're in now?
Well, I spent 9 years in consulting before I joined Australia Post. And leadership in a consulting environment is very different because you're constantly creating teams and disbanding teams, working virtually, working with people that maybe you haven't got a relationship with, maybe globally. So very diverse teams and multiple teams at any one time. So being able to lead people in different scenarios and apply different leadership styles is really important at the same time. So, most people have a role, they are a leader, they get to know their team, they get to know what works, and then they're comfortable in that leadership style. I think in a consulting environment, as I say, multiple teams, so you need to be using multiple leadership styles at the same time.
And was that the big learning from being in the consulting field, your ability to adapt and be agile in how you lead?
Very much so, very much. And you learn so much from the different people, and every person is a different person and going to respond differently to a different leadership style. So you can never assume, I think, was the big takeaway, is you have to, get to know the team that you're going to be working with very fast in that situation, but also, be open to the feedback as well, because you need to be turning things around quite fast for your clients. So if something's not working, you have to have that open and honest two-way dialogue.
And was it a deliberate decision for you to sort of leave employment and go into that consulting type role? Sort of. So I was working in London at the time, and the role in consulting in Australia came up, and I applied thinking I'd never go to Australia. I'd never been here before, and I applied for it, and then I had a video interview and then another one, and then suddenly they offered me a role a few months later, and it was only for 2 years. So I was sure, I'll jump on a plane and go to Australia, and it's only a couple of years. Sounds like an exciting adventure. Not really probably knowing what I was walking into, or the challenges, but such a great learning experience. And I'm really, really, with hindsight, looking back, it was the best part of my career to take that move at that time. Okay. And why did you decide to join Australia Post?
Probably the reasons a lot of people join from our grads upwards. The brand, very well-known brand, as I say, we're one of the most trusted brands. But it's also the challenge. It's such a unique company. There is no other company like Australia Post. We're the largest government organisation in Australia. We are, we're there for the community. We have a real purpose, and that connects with the people that work for Australia Post. So you come to work, you're making a difference to every community in Australia. There are not many organisations you can walk into and say that's what you're doing. So I think Australia Post is unique. The culture here is the best culture of any organisation I have ever worked in, been to, engaged with as well. So the people make Australia Post all the way through. All 35,000 of them make Australia Post who it is.
Okay. Wouldn't mind exploring that a bit. Talk to me a little bit about this culture that's so amazing here.
There's so many ways I could describe it, but the culture here, we're collaborative, very supportive, and it's about, we're all working towards the same thing. And having that single purpose that we are here to serve the community, everyone really matters. It brings everything together. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter where you work. You're all working to the same goal. And that's what makes it so special. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing, what project I might be looking at or working on, wherever I go, whichever part of the business I interact with, you're welcomed in, you're part of a family. And so I've not really found that in any other organisation ever that I've engaged with.
Do you think that has evolved, or was it deliberately designed?
Good question. I think it's probably evolved. Australia Post has been around for 210 years, with a very long time. We've evolved out of being a postal service. We're a global logistics now and transport company. We touch every part of the world as well. So I think we have just evolved, but in the core of it is we are here for the communities of Australia, and that gives us a single purpose. That hasn't changed over the last 200 years, So having had that for so long, it does make a difference.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated with how organisational cultures develop, and it's interesting that it seems to have been able to maintain a little bit of that family sort of community sort of feel about it since being so old too, over 200 years. That's pretty significant.
Very much so. And you know, different people have come and gone, different leaders have come and gone, but that core is still there. And I think the fact that we all respect that as well makes that difference.
So now that you're back in corporate after leaving the consulting world, what are you learning about yourself as a leader?
Well, corporate is very different to consulting. So what am I learning about myself as a leader? I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm using probably skills I haven't used for a long time back in a corporate environment. That is thinking about engagement with the team, with others around me, thinking about what does that leadership really mean, and also enjoying that, really investing long term in my team and spending time with them, coaching, developing them. So in the consulting world, I'd say sort of jumping around, and while you have ongoing relationships, having a team that I know are there ongoing and investing that time and coaching, watching them grow is a real pleasure.
So you mentioned you've got a team of around 60. How do you find leading 60 people?
I'll let you know. I've only been doing it for about a month now, so they are an incredible team, and the teamwork that they have makes them very, very special. So if they were a disparate team, it would be a really hard job to be walking in to lead that team. I don't actually feel like I am probably doing too much at the moment, but I'm still getting to know them all. And that for me is number one important. I want to get to know every one of them and find out, you know, what makes them tick, what makes them come to work, and how I can help them. So maybe we'll have a conversation in a year and I'll let you know.
Is that a very deliberate approach that you've decided to take as a leader, that you want to spend the time getting to know them and really start to connect with them on a personal level?
Definitely. For me, the relationship that I build with my team means I can be a better leader longer term. You know, every single person is unique. Every single person is bringing something special to the team. And if I don't know what that is, I can't help them grow and develop and longer term either. So for me, getting to know everybody is really important.
So you've had a fair bit of experience around in different types of roles. Well, what do you think the biggest myth exists about leadership?
I think one of the biggest myths around leadership is leadership. It's not. It's actually about connecting with people. And, you know, you can't teach somebody to be a leader out of a book. You know, you have to go and connect with people. You have to understand people. You have to have a vision. You have to have a purpose. You have to be able to bring it all together. So I think probably one of the myths that you can go to some leadership course and be a wonderful leader probably, you know, it's not really true. What you can do is go and learn skills that will help you be a leader or help you be a better leader. But it's got to be intuitive. It's got to come from you, and it's got to come from the heart. It really has.
Yeah, I think it's always important that people make that decision that they want to be a leader, because if they haven't made the decision, it doesn't matter how much training they do or how many books they read or how many, you know, videos or podcasts they listen to, that just won't make a difference.
Definitely. And I also think as well that they're different leaders for different times and for different scenarios. So, you know, you can say somebody is a bad leader or a good leader. I don't think they are. I just think they're different leaders and they work in different situations. You know, if you look at CEOs, you know, if you've got to turn around a company, the way you lead that company is going to be very different to somebody that's trying to do accelerated growth of a company. Skills are different, leadership styles are different. So it doesn't mean one or the other is good or bad. It just means they are different. And it's the same all the way down then for any leader. It's what type of leader do you need to be right now? And that might not be your natural style. It might not be your skill set. And again, you know, if you can own up to that and acknowledge that, then that makes it easier then to go, well, what type of leader does this place need or does this team need at this time? And maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else right now. That to me is a real leader who can have that objectivity and understand and recognise what type of leadership is needed for that team at that time.
Again, it gets back to what you were saying earlier about the agility, being able to move and shake and apply different ideas.
Very much so, yeah.
So how do you describe yourself as a leader?
Very badly, probably. As I say, it comes back to people. Me, I would love that people would describe me as a people leader, and that engagement with my team. I hope I'm fair. I hope I'm equitable. I hope I'm all these things, and I try to be. I hope I'm approachable. I hope, I'm all. You want to tick all these boxes, but what sort of leader am I? I just love people, and I love seeing people grow. So that for me is that I'm that sort of leader. Okay.
Did you make a deliberate decision to go for this type of role that you're in?
No.
No?
No, not at all. I think as you grow in your career, you naturally get into leadership roles, and therefore, leading people, leading teams and leading others becomes part of it. It's not something, somebody actually sort of says, right, I'm going to be a leader. It's just I'm going to grow my career, and oh, by the way, I lead people, which is, I think, why we end up sometimes, particularly when new leaders come along, that, they may not have the skills to lead people, and then it's a bit of a culture shock for them that, they can't just stand there and go, do this or do that and dictate and think that's how it works. So leadership is an evolution in itself, and you do have to grow with it yourself as you grow your career. And you also have to accept that sometimes you probably got it wrong. But as long as you kind of learn for that and you own it, then okay, move on and become a better leader. So I don't think anybody's the perfect leader on day one, the minute they step into a leadership role.
I'm always fascinated with the types of models or frameworks or tools that people use. Are there any that you particularly like?
Look, I think that the tools for leadership are useful in certain situations. I think they're great for structuring thinking, and particularly if you need to take a step back and plan for going forward. So, the SWOT analyses and all these types of leadership tools are good, but they have their place. A good leader will hopefully bring a vision to their team and be able to articulate that well, and do that without needing lots of pictures and lots of SWOT analyses or whatever to take that forward. But again, I think it's useful. And it's also useful sometimes to revisit as a leader and look at different models and say, maybe I take a little bit of that one and a little bit of that one, and that would work for me. Because I think leadership's a very personal style and a very personal thing, that what will work for one person won't work for another.
And so you're only a short time into your role now. Well, what are the big challenges you see ahead?
I think the biggest challenge for me is I've got a really great established team that are working really, really well. What is that next step? What is that how do I take the team to the next level? What does that look like? How do you take a team that works so well and make them better? I don't know. I don't know the answers for that. Maybe they'll tell me.
It's because it is interesting, isn't it? When you're the almost essentially the new kid on the block, and they're all really established.
Yeah, very much so. Which is why I go back to, it's really important that I get to know them, and get to know what makes each individual tick, what's important to them, and what do they want to see next. Because I can come in and say, this is what I think we should do. But if they've got different ideas, and as I say, they've been working really well together for quite a while, they're getting something right there. So I think I'm going to learn from them.
That's right. So I'm always interested in the conversations I have with leaders is that they often have an area of passion which really floats their boat within the whole leadership space. What is it that you describe as your area of leadership passion?
Well, I think we've already touched on it. It is really seeing somebody grow and develop and being able to coach them and be a part of that and contribute to that. That really is my passion as a leader. If somebody can come to me, or I've taken on team members in the past and, they've been considered underperformers, to watch somebody grow and be able to give them the confidence to grow and excel, I think just is the most amazing part of being any leader in any role, in any organisation. It's got to be the people and that development.
And so how do you go about that? So you got 60 people that you're going to start to get to know. How are you planning to go about developing them?
So get to know each one, find out what they want to do, what is it they want to develop. I think as well, you can't also just narrow it down to what are they going to do in the workplace. What is it they want to do as their next step, whether that's outside of work or in work, and then how can we help people develop and grow to where they want to go? Because if people are, happy, they feel they're on that journey, they're fulfilled, they will be happier at work, they will develop at work, even if the area they're saying they want to develop in is outside work. So it is about the whole person. It's about where they want to go, what do they want to do, and then how can I help them on that journey?
Okay. So do you do that through one-on-one conversations? Do you do it, is there a very formal process that you follow?
For me, it's one-on-one conversations, get to know the people, and then it's daily interaction. I'm lucky and fortunate that most of my team are sitting around me. It's coming in, it's having the conversation. It's, hey, have you started your course that we were talking about? How's it going? How are you finding it? And it's that more informal interaction, which, day on day, you get to know people. And being available as well. If people want to come and chat, they can come and chat. They can come and tell me about what's going on, how they're going. I love that. I love hearing that, they have taken that first step on a journey.
That's an interesting point. How do you maintain that balance between having that open door policy of people just coming in to have a chat and getting stuff done?
Well, we sit in an open plan office, so I'm available to anybody. And I think it's about, for me, my team are above anything else. So if they want to interact, then that's more important than anything else. I can write an email later, but if somebody wants to talk to me there and then and tell me about how they're going, that's much more important than have I just hit send on an email. So, if there's something desperately important, obviously you have to, get it done, and there are ways you can do that, and you move away from the team maybe. But for me, being there for the team is important. That's what I'm there for. I'm there to lead the team, and I'm there and available to them.
Do you consider yourself a coach for your team?
Oh, definitely. I actually think leader is probably the wrong word. I'm there to coach and develop the team and make the team, the best we can be. To say that they are amazing already. So I'm feeling like I've got a bit of an easy job here because they're pretty good. And, but coaching and developing people is absolutely the core of what a leader should be doing.
Yeah. And do you subscribe to any particular type of coaching methodology like GROW or anything else?
No, because I think every person is an individual. So what's going to work with one person, isn't it? What's going to work with somebody else. Some people just want to be acknowledged. Others just want to get on and do it and just have the opportunity. It's about adapting to what's going to work for each individual person.
And when you're having these conversations, I imagine that you're really focusing on building trust and building that depth of relationship so that people can feel comfortable telling you, this is why I'm not performing well because something's going on in my personal life?
Look, I think, absolutely. Building trust and finding out what's going on in somebody's life. Normally, everybody comes to work to do a good job. No, I've never met anyone who comes to work to do a bad job. So if you start from that premise, then it's about how can we, what's next? What do you want to change? Everybody needs to develop something. Everyone can be better or improve on something. So what do you want to work on? But you've got to want to do it. An individual has to want to change or improve or develop. It's not me sitting there saying you need to develop this, because the person has to be invested in it too.
So how do you go about when you see the need for someone to change or develop, but they don't necessarily see the need?
Look, I think one of the ways is to, if you've got an open conversation, then it's about saying, has something changed? That's the first thing. So is it a new thing that they're doing or not doing? If it's something that's changed, then it's about finding out what's changed for them, that they're now doing something different or not doing it, and you explore it that way. But a good way sometimes also is to ask them, what do they think good looks like? What does a person in this role, what would be perfection? We're never going to get to perfection, but what does perfection look like? And ask them to articulate that. And then you can then explore and say, well, what parts are you doing that are excellent? But also, what parts do you think maybe you're not doing quite so well on? Well, they're then telling you what's good and what they do well and where they might need to develop. So, as I say, it goes back to they need to own it themselves. An individual has to own their own development. I'm very passionate about lifelong learning and your own development. If you don't own it yourself, then you don't buy into it and you're not going to give it 100%.
I always find that, because I agree completely, it's the lifelong learning and also taking charge of your own development. But one of the things I find happens to us, because we run leadership programs, is someone or an organisation will book us in, book all the people in, and they'll give me the heads up that this one person, you need to fix him, Julian. And I can't fix anyone in a training room, but when you speak to that individual, they just have no interest in owning their own development, owning their own learning, or being better. How do you handle that when you come across someone like that?
There's normally something behind that, and that's not the issue. Most people want to be better or do a good job. So it comes back to understanding what's driving that individual. And 9 times out of 10, there is something totally different going on. And this is an outcome of that issue. And if you can get to talk about what the real issue is, then you can help them think about, well, what impact is that having on the rest of their world, and say that it might just be that something else is manifesting as this, and they're just not even aware that that's happening because they're just so focused on some other issue. So I've found that with a few people that over the years that I've worked with. You go in. I think the key here for a leader is never go in assuming that you know what the answer is, because it never is the right answer.
Yeah, there could always be something that's a bit of a surprise, couldn't there?
Very much so. I've been very surprised in a lot of ways over the years. Nothing I'm going to share, though.
That's all right. So what does the future hold for you, Jayne? What sort of goals have you set for yourself?
Well, the next 12 months, as I say, is definitely getting to know the team, getting to know what makes each of them tick. And we've got a busy year ahead. It's gone through a lot of change at Australia Post over the last year. Had, Christine coming in as the new CEO, new leadership team. So it's now really looking to the future. So we've got a lot of work to do over the next 12 months.
Okay. And where can people find out more about you if they want to know more?
If they want to know more about me, I've got my LinkedIn profile. Always have a look at that. And, nothing, you can always message me on LinkedIn, and if you've got some real questions that you don't think I've covered.
Yeah. And so we were chatting earlier about development. What sort of development do you try to undertake as a leader? Because one of the things I've noticed is that the more senior people get in the hierarchy of an organisation, the more their development sort of changes. They're no longer so interested in going to a course. They're looking for other ways to develop. How do you do that?
For me, it's more about themes through a year. So, talking to you is one of those. Sort of talking in public is a theme that I've had this year. My themes tend to revolve as I talk to people around me, get my feedback on where they see my development areas might be. Next year, I haven't quite come up with my theme yet, but it will evolve. I don't have to start on January the 1st with my life's resolution. It's about an evolution. It might be I continue with this year's theme. Something else may come along next year. But it's growing. As long as I'm growing, as long as I'm learning, as long as I'm developing, then I'm happy and I'm achieving where I want to get to.
And so what challenges do you think Australia Post is going to face in the next couple of years?
Externally, the market and the world is changing. I think any company is struggling to keep up with that. This rapid speed of change and talent, attracting the talent to the organisation in a changing world. You've got the different generations coming in, millennials coming in with very different ideas of what work should look like, what teams should look like, how any organisation should work. And that's alongside people that have been in the workspace for quite a while. So I think those are big challenges that we as a country and the world will have to face into is how do you bring these very, very different groups of generational groups together to work harmoniously? And I do laugh a little bit because I always go back to, every generation sort of says, oh, they're terrible, the next generation coming through. But I think the difference now is that we've got such a span of generations. So 5 generations working in the organisation side by side is a huge challenge. So that alone is a massive challenge for us to face into.
Any ideas on how you're going to handle that challenge?
Oh, you've got to break down the barriers, haven't you? And break down assumptions, because not every millennial will come in the door expecting this, and not every more mature worker will not embrace technology or whatever the stereotype is. I think you have to take away the stereotypes and just get people to get to know the people and working together, and therefore respecting each group for what they bring to the table.
Are there any leaders that you look up to or that inspire you?
Lots of leaders. As I say, every leader brings something different anyway to a role, and it's always situational. Christine is a fantastic leader. She's very inspiring, very creative, and a very different leader. And she's just what we need right now. We need that big thinking. So for me, Christine's a great example of someone that really inspires me. You can spend half an hour with Christine and you just walk out and your head's exploding with all these ideas and all these things that you've talked about. So that really inspires me as a leader that can really think big, think bigger than I can think, and then you sit there and go, okay, all these things, and you can't even keep up with them yourself. So yeah, that for me is a really quite inspirational leader.
That must be quite motivating, having an inspirational leader in your own business, especially one that's leading 35,000 people.
Very motivational, and we've been so lucky having Christine here this year to really start to change us as an organisation and take us to that future. It is very motivational. And very inspirational as well. I think it's making all of us better leaders because we're having to think differently. It really challenges how you think or have thought when you have got that inspirational leader.
Are you finding when you talk with your colleagues that there's they have a different perspective of that? Because the inspirational, motivational leader doesn't always resonate with everyone. Are any of your colleagues sort of going, uh-oh?
I think you go, oh, wow, that's different. And you do go back to, well, what do I know? What's my points of reference? And how can I relate what I've just heard to what I've just done for the last 2 years? And that makes you stop and think. So, you do kind of go, oh, wow, how's that going to work? But then you work through that and you start talking, you kind of go, well, actually, no, that's really clever. That's really great. Oh, wow. Yeah. And you start to build it. So I think your instinct is to go, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with that or that idea or where that's going. I'm not sure. But then when you sort of start to work it through, I think everybody kind of goes, okay, yeah. And that's why it's so different. That's why it's so inspirational.
Any last words on leadership you'd like to share with our audience?
I think for being a leader I'll go back to it is about the people. And if you forget it's about the people that you lead, then you probably have lost what a good leader really is. If you've got to invest in your people, you've got to take them on the journey with you, and nothing ever gets done by a single person. It's always done by a team. So if you don't have your team with you, then you're not going to achieve much.
Well, on that note, thank you, Jayne Ward, so much for being a part of the Synergy Leadership podcast. All the best.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you.
Well, that wraps up episode 56 of the Synergy Leadership podcast. And I'd like to encourage you to head on over to the Synergy Group website and engage in the conversation with us. Tell us what you liked, tell us who you'd like us to interview, and tell us what type of content you'd like us to deliver to you. And if you are an iPhone user, please feel free to head to Apple and leave us a review. In next week's episode, I speak with Donna McGeorge, who is the author of The 25-Minute Meeting, Half the Time, Double the Impact. It's another fantastic interview with another author. So until then, would love to hear what you think, and happy listening.